What is going on, everybody? Hope you're all having a good Wednesday. BobbyFi with my man Eric Sheets. I am coming off a little bit of a losing streak with baseball. It was weird though, because like in my big buy-ins, I actually ended up cashing kind of deep with pretty awful scores. I think that it was just one of those really awful.
It was a freaking sheet slate. How did I not win?
I don't know how you didn't win. And then after the Angel home run in the second inning or whatever it was, and you posted that, I was like,
Yep.
Here he goes. He's gonna win.
Yep.
It wasn't to be, I guess, but. There was still that, on to another day.
Excuse me, sir. I didn't know. I actually, I want to say trolled your lineup one time. I didn't check and see how you were doing. But then when I saw that Morton had like a gazillion points, oh my God, Bobby totally freaking cleaned up. And then I looked at the DraftKings lineups. They whatever. I totally forgot that the Red Sox is totally busted.
The Red Sox busted, the Rockies busted too. But and it was weird. My favorite plays though on FanDuel, I was in first place of the big one for a long time.
Oh, no way.
Well, because I had Schwarber. I only had Schwarber. I had Schwarber and Renfroe.
That's like those two are first place by themselves.
Right, exactly. But then of course, literally not like any fantasy points for anybody else. So that didn't held up, obviously. But we're on to another one.
The good news is you get to try it again today.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's going to be the answer. Well, why don't you pull up your screen and we'll go game by game? Because unfortunately, my outlook on this slate is fairly similar to yesterday's slate, and with the one big exception. And you said to watch out for when I say this, so I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Well, I really like the Dodgers, but I really like the Giants. So
I have a question. Was Bueller on the optimal?
Probably. I don't know. He was
presuming
really good
because he always is. I mean,
he was excellent. He was the reason I was able to cash in my 777 and stuff like that, because he and Morton were enough. They had more than half my fantasy points. Anyway, let's jump into it, because I think this slate is interesting. There's a lot of different options at pitcher. I don't think it's a decisively clear example of what you should do, and I think that there is. I actually think that, I just hope that Boston they won't be. People are too smart and they'll look at enough numbers. But I'll go right back to it again. There was a lot of flukiness in that. I mean, you look at it, I didn't watch the whole thing, but I'm looking at everything: fly ball to center, line drive to left, line drive to right, high fly ball to the right, fly ball to center, fly ball to left, and just nothing dropping for anybody. And I just don't think this is going to repeat itself too many times. So I'm going to be heavy on this again, and we'll start it off because it's the first game. I am very into Boston again. I just recommend you do the thing that I said to do yesterday, which you play the lower owned guys. So JD on DraftKings, Kike and Schwarber should be the lower owned, along with Vasquez and Iglesias, which is not the most exciting play in the world. But I am into the stack again. I'm not going to take one night and hold that to gospel in baseball. In fact, we see it all the time where team scores 12 runs, then they come back with one. They score one this time, and I think they come back with a big night tonight against Lothar and the bullpen. So I'm not going to play any Evaldi. I understand that some people are going to have a recommendation. We have one of the more extreme hitters, umpires in John Lipka behind the plate, supposedly as of right now, early this morning, obviously. So I'm very into it. I have Red Sox represented in most of my early builds, and I think that they will be my favorite stack again. Gulp. Sorry, guys, if anybody I let down last night, but they're going to be popular. So like I said, try and get different with the Schwarber, the Kike, maybe play Vasquez as your catcher, and maybe consider Iglesias. Those are the guys you can use to get a little bit off the board. What are your thoughts in this game?
First of all, I have Evaldi as kind of a tertiary option. Not, nothing I'm really just looking to do, but and now that you told me that the umpire is not on the side of the pitchers, I think that kind of pushes me over the edge as far as that goes. I'm probably not going to get to him except by accident. I do like Boston as one of the better stacks. I don't have them heads and above. As a matter of fact, I have them kind of tied for second on DraftKings, and I have them second, tied for second on FanDuel also. We'll get to that, I guess. Just a little standings watch here. So I might get my play-in game at home after all. Yankees are now a full two games ahead.
Wow, what a run they've been on, huh?
Yup. And they've been running hot with the Blue Jays losing when they needed to sometimes. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So looks like the Yankees are 2 games up, and then 3 games, a full 3 games up on the Blue Jays, who are 1 game behind the Red Sox. So it's looking like a Yankee playing game at home is what I might be doing on October 4th, but we'll see. I do like Boston though. All the guys you mentioned make sense, and I'm not going to play Baltimore against the Red Sox.
Yeah, I probably am too quick to dismiss Eovaldi, and it's not just the pitchers, the umpire. I just like other players that are cheaper, and I like other guys that are more expensive. But in all fairness, he probably does have the upside to be viable here. So maybe I should consider him. I just have a long list of guys who I think are interesting tonight. And I just didn't find his price tier as interesting. I know it sounds like a weird thing to say, but I think I might. There's two guys I'm going to add who aren't on my initial list when I just posted on TrueDFS.com with my exact ownerships and everything. And I think that those are going to end up one's Eovaldi. I'll get to the other guy in a little bit, but it's going to be Mikolas, who I'm going to use a little bit of as well. All right, but I do think I maybe dismissed Eovaldi a little too quick. I think that there's a plenty of upside against this Baltimore lineup against, it doesn't matter who's behind the plate for umpire wise. But one thing is, are we maybe not overlooking not playing any of these Baltimore guys? Like, you have a guy who'll challenge hitters who gives up a lot of home runs against a cheap Baltimore team. I'm just going to throw out that, Mountcastle and Mullins are really good. Austin Hayes is still too cheap, and so is Trey Mancini. I don't know if I'll get to any of them or Severino, but I like all those guys just fine if you find yourself ending up there.
So I have a question, by the way. One other thing about last night. How great was my Brady Singer call last night? Pretty good, right?
What did he end up doing?
He ended up getting knocked out of the first inning with an injury.
Oh man!
They gave up 3 runs. They gave up 3 runs, and they pulled them -5 fantasy points.
Man! For a minute, I was kicking myself for not having that Cleveland stack, but I didn't get there either. But they didn't do anything anyways. I mean, they didn't.
Don't worry, we got another fancy play syndrome pitcher coming up.
Okay.
All right, so Yankees Toronto. Let's.
Well, tell us. These are your boys. So what are we gonna?
Let's put the hammer on them. And I'll tell you this: the Blue Jays, they were in first place in this 3-team play scramble just a week ago. Now they're trying to hang on. I'll tell you, man, you're trying to hang on, and you got to go up against Garrett Cole. It's not easy. It's not easy to be patient. And sure, Cole could have a good game. It's going to be, again, one of those spots where he's going to project for shit. And he's probably going to be low owned, if you want to know the truth. And you probably have to play him. He's not showing up for me as like a top play numbers wise or anything like that. But I think it's silly in GPPs to not try it. That would be my take on this whole game.
I actually agree with that with Cole. I think that though your real play here might end up being Barrios at even lower ownership. I do think Cole will pick up steam as the day goes on.
Yeah, he should.
It's just that it's a really low strikeout team and all that, yada yada yada. Like they're not the same maybe that you'd hope for, but I mean, this is ridiculous. Kind of if he's going to be below 10%, he's just too good of a pitcher, and it's not like impossible to play him with Scherzer if you wanted to do that. I get the feeling people are going to be a lot more comfortable playing Scherzer tonight after how good Buehler looked last night. Even though he still only had 5 strikeouts, but he did pitch 7 really strong innings without giving up a run. But I think both these pitchers are firmly in play. Would you believe this game as of right now is a pick'em game? I'm kind of surprised by that. I would have thought the Yankees with Cole would be a little bit of a favorite here.
Well, I would have thought so, huh?
Yeah, so I think that those numbers will probably shift, but as of right now, it's exactly 8-run total, and you've got 4 for each. Barrios, as I mentioned last time against the Yankees, when everyone, how could you play, Barrios on this slate? There was all these guys. He put up 26 fantasy points on DraftKings last time, 6 2/3, 8 strikeouts against these Yankees, and it's only because he gave a home run late. I like both these guys. I realistically don't have them prioritized, but I think they're both viable options. That's where I've got them. And while it's not it is a big slate, so I don't think you need to try and do it. If you're going to target any power, I'm never going to fault you on either of these teams. They just have too much upside. But I would just stick to the best hitters. And if you want to take a weird one-off and you had the money to do it, to play a Stanton, a Judge, or a Vlad or something like that, but I'm realistically not going to get there. So Miami and New York is kind of a tough one here, because before I started doing my stuff early this morning, I was very very into the Tywin Walker play. A lot of the things that you worry about with him are somewhat negated against this particular opponent. And it's not like they need him to pitch or anything. Like, I mean, they don't not really playing for much, but I think they'd let him go out there as long as he's rolling. He hasn't put up 20 fantasy points in a million years. If there was one lineup you could do it against, it would be this lineup. And honestly, Eliza Hernandez has got really good stuff as well. They both have a 5.5K prop, and they're both cheap. I'm siding with Walker. I understand he's going to have some ownership. That's why I mentioned the Mikolas thing before. But I am going to be playing some Tywin Walker tonight on both sides, actually.
Yeah, Walker is my top option on both sides, just as far as value goes. But I also I kind of like the Hernandez play actually. I like them both. I like Walker better, but Hernandez certainly has a ceiling, and the Mets can give up a ceiling, and maybe the umpire is correlative. Maybe he gives both pitchers the same corners. Who knows? I'm totally into that. So I like Walker. I have this feeling that he's gonna, like you said, I think he's gonna get ownership. But I mean, if he's 10-15%, that's fine. I don't want to play him at
I think he's
25.
he's gonna be higher than that.
You think so?
I think
I don't want to play him at 25.
Yeah, that's where I think he'll be. He might even be above that.
Oh, yeah. Well, then that's probably not going to happen. For the reasons you mentioned. I mean, he hasn't scored 20 fantasy points in like forever. But like you said, he is only 6,600. I don't even need to score 20 fantasy points. And Miami is the remedy for a lot of issues like that, as you just perfectly mentioned. I don't have any interest in any of the hitting here. So for me, Walker is the top point per dollar play on the slate. Doesn't mean you have to play him, but I'm just saying what it is. And I think Hernandez is a good GPP play.
Yeah, I think Conforto is an excellent GPP play on both sides. He's the main hitting option. I think Nimmo will get a little ownership as well. They're just too cheap. Conforto's 2,900 on DraftKings and 2,300 on FanDuel. So while initially this doesn't look like a spot you want to attack, I mean, by the way, they're all too cheap. Pete Alonso is 4K, but you're going to find that throughout the industry today. So that's why I'm going to pair my Boston, who, again, they're expensive, but I'm going to try and pair them with other expensive combinations and try and use a couple cheap bats. And Conforto is a guy who kind of stands out as one of those for me. Philly and Atlanta. Oddly enough, on this slate, I am not finding myself with any Aaron Nola. I get nervous about pitching against Atlanta in general. And I don't think Nola's been in his best form. I think we have other pitchers, again, just above him and just beneath him that I like a little bit better. And I'm not finding myself with any of him. I was into what's his name last night. He pitched well, Wheeler, but it was, again, you're not getting like the massive ceiling against this Atlanta team as you would against some other opponents. So, and Fried is a really good real life pitcher facing a lineup that's pretty tough on lefties. But the guy gets overlooked every time. And we mentioned it last time he pitched, and he goes out and throws a complete game shutout, right? Like I think it was a shutout. There's his upside though, is throwing that kind of a game. Very important game for both teams. Certainly Fried has the talent to do it, but as of right now, I'm not ending up with these guys too much.
Yeah, if there weren't if there weren't other kind of similar ceiling type options, I would say that Nola could be a shot. You know what I mean? But I mean, you got Scherzer. There's Cole, Rodon. I mean, there are pitchers that can throw up numbers here. So I'm kind of with you. I think that if you play a bunch of lineups, throwing in a Nola here and there,
you should be
fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's not a priority for me. Fried, like I said, I mean, I just don't play him in fantasy all too often when you have like a big slate like this.
Yeah.
Especially when, I don't know. I mean, probably pretty safe to win the game. I think. Maybe not. I would know against side. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I would know their side. So yeah. So I'm probably off of pretty much the whole game actually.
Yeah, that's a little bit how I feel. I do think that if I get to more lineups, I would play some Nola for sure. But as of right now, I'm not finding it. This is an interesting spot here. This next game with Detroit, Minnesota. I like Minnesota today. I think that you're only going to get a couple innings from Casey Mize, and then you got the bullpen basically. And even against Mize, like I know he's pretty good stuff, keeps the ball on the ground, but he's only pitching a few innings anyway. I do like the Minnesota side against the Detroit bullpen. And I wanted to play Detroit, but outside of Baddoo, I can't really come up with someone who I really want to play. And I think Pineda is going to be in play for a lot of people, or for some people. I'm just not able to quite get there. I get it. I just like I said, there's a lot of guys we can choose from on this slate. So this game is a little bit of a stay away from the pitching side of it. And I am into Minnesota. I think this is a good spot. You can get a cheap low-owned Max Kepler. I don't know how low-owned he'll be on FanDuel actually, because he's 2.6 over there, which is just way too cheap for him. But he'll be back in the normal part of the lineup. Arias is 2.1 on FanDuel and reasonable on DraftKings, 37. I think they're going to get ownership. So I would try, like, guys like Donaldson might be a little lower owned. I don't think Garver is going to be especially high owned. But I am very into this, and I'm finding myself with more of it on FanDuel though.
Yeah, Minnesota is my top stack on FanDuel, given everything else. That's why I have Boston beneath them. I'm not just talking raw points, the combination of points and values. And I have them, Minnesota, as kind of like tied for second on DraftKings as well, with all the guys that you mentioned. Buxton, Kepler, 3,900. Nick Gordon is cheap, 2,400. Donaldson, Arias, like you mentioned, really cheap on FanDuel, but like you said, reasonable enough on DraftKings. And I do like that. I don't like any of the pitching on either side of this. And yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah. I mean, look, if you get stuck and you want to play the double cheap, I don't think Pineda is the worst thing in the world, but it's just not what I'm going to do today.
Yeah, I have him 11th.
That's about where I've got him too. Exactly.
Yeah.
I actually think if you want a more, to me, a more viable option is in this next game. Look, I talk about this guy. I talk about, the Lizard King all the time being a good real life pitcher. The problem is he doesn't strike out people at all, but he is 6,500, and he definitely gives himself more of a leash because he doesn't really walk guys as much as Pineda.
Well, the one thing you're locking is 4 points because St. Louis never loses.
Exactly. They just never lose. But you never know. It's going to be a comeback. They got 6 comebacks in this time at the end. So, but he pitched 7 innings against this team last time out and put up 19 fantasy points. He only had 3 strikeouts. It's a little concerning. But if you're looking for a double pairing to play with Walker as a cheap option, I think he's a little bit better of an option, in my opinion, than we have with the other side, with Pineda. So I'm finding myself with a little bit of interest in him. And I know St. Louis keeps winning, but I don't know that I really want to stack them. Hauser's okay, and they've got a good bullpen. I don't mind if people get to this. I don't think anyone's going to. Sort of weird prices, and it's like, who do you want to play exactly? But that's how we felt for the last 17 days also. So if you want to get off the board, I think St. Louis is viable. I'm just not doing it with my few lineups today because I'm traveling.
Sounds good to me.
Any thoughts on Mikolas for you? Could you get there?
Not for me.
Okay. If you're doing the double pay down though, you could get kind of fun with it. You can play, all the expensive guys you want. All right.
Well, you know what? If you want to have some fun, we can talk about the next one.
Well, so I was going to say that, like, if you want to get really weird with a pitching option, first of all, I don't think there's anything wrong with taking a shot on Taylor Hearn. He needs things to break his way. He's 5,100 though. Again, probably not going to get to it. No cores on this part of the slate, but I do think 4.5 K prop for a guy at 5.1 who's put up 20 of multiple times is mildly interesting against, sorry to say, Sheets, a weak Angel lineup. At the same time, I think both sides of the hitting are completely in play on this game. Stassi as a catcher, not just because he had a home run last night, he'll be popular. I think Ohtani might even get some love in the lefty-lefty matchup here, just because people are going to be kind of, if people want to get away from Boston, that is. But you can stack them really cheaply, and I actually don't think the stack will be unowned. Jack Mayfield at 2,600, Phil Gosselin at 2,400. I mean, I could just say this about 20 whatever hundred. Whether Brandon Marsh is leading off, even in a lefty. If not, Lagares, you know what I mean? Fletcher, depending on where he hits, 2.9. There's just a lot of ways you could go with this stack, and you could always throw in a Walsh. The problem is their better hitters are left-handed at this point. So we're sort of playing these little scrubby guys in a stack. If you want to double spend up a pitcher, I think they're a very viable route to do it. And then I like Texas I like the spot for Texas, but outside of the guy who will be probably in most of my lineups, or my highest owned position player, is Willie Calhoun. Just way too good of a hitter to be minimum cost. And I know he's still coming back and everything, but he's actually like I mean, this guy's a good baseball player. And I think they're very viable. Calhoun and Garcia being my favorite. Unfortunately, they're outfielders. I like Solak too, and Nate Lowe, but I don't think I'm going to go crazy with it. I do see myself probably getting to a Texas stack or two, though.
I totally agree with pretty much everything you said, with the exception of the fact that I'll totally play Taylor Hearn. I would I have him rated as a pretty decent pivot off of some of the cheaper guys. So I would try that, and I would try the Angels, and I would try Texas. I have both Angels and Texas as, very, very viable value stacks to either complement or to lead with double pair pitching options. And I agree with literally everything that you said. I mean, Angels, Texas, those are tied with Boston and Minnesota as great values for me. So I'm going to probably have some of all of that. And I do think that Taylor Hearn is perfectly viable if you need to pay up for hitting somewhere. So yeah, I completely agree with everything you said in that game.
Yep. Nice. All right, let's jump on over to Chicago and Cincinnati, which is, I'm showing early percentage. I'm showing a lot of early ownership on Rodon. You can have it. People can have it. I think Rodon's a really good pitcher. They have no reason to let him throw pitches except for to get him warmed up for the playoffs right now. I think you're looking at 90 to 100 capped, and even that probably is reaching us only if he's pitching really well. There's really no reason for them to do anything with him here. The weird part is Sonny Gray will be completely unowned. Now, you're going to an American League Park against a powerful team that does strike out, though, and they don't walk. An interesting maybe off the board play. I just like other pitchers better. So Sonny Gray is not as high on, but he just has a low owned option, a weird pivot. I think he's an interesting pivot. I mean, I think he's a more interesting play. Well, he's as interesting to me as Eovaldi, and he's going to be 1/10 the ownership. So I am mildly interested in Sonny Gray, not interested in Rodon, not interested in hitting.
Yeah, I have Rodon projecting not decently, but like you said, I mean, they really have no reason to capture all the fantasy points that he has in his arsenal. You know what I mean? Given what they want to do with him, they want him ready for the playoffs and all that stuff. So, and look, nobody got rich targeting Cincinnati this season. So right. I don't think I want to do that. And Sonny Gray, I didn't think about that. Maybe that's not the worst idea in the world. I'm not getting to him, but like you said, if I'm not getting to him, that means no one's getting to him, which means he's 5%, which it's always good. It's when you have a guy that can put up 20 plus fantasy points at 5%. So yeah, I'll definitely consider that.
Yep. I think it's interesting at the very least. I have zero anything from the next game we're going to talk about. Like, I could make a bunch of arguments each way for the Tampa Bay Houston situation. Sure, there's any of the one-offs are good. Nobody stands out from a pricing perspective in a major way for me, but I think that there's plenty of good hitters Houston scored more runs this year than any team in baseball. Partly that's due to also having an easier schedule than some of the other like the AL East teams and the NL West teams, but they are a powerful offense. I'm just not going to find my way to get to anything in this game. That's basically where I'm at. I think Garcia is a good real life pitcher. I'm not going to play him against Tampa Bay here. That's pretty much it.
I'm just so excited. This is the last, those who've been following, this is the last start, I presume, for Luis Garcia. Yeah. It's gonna make my life so much easier because there are 3 Luis Garcias in my overall player pool. And every day that Luis Garcia pitches, I have to literally manually go in and deal with the Luis Garcia issue.
It's so weird with him because he's a good pitcher, but he has that weird 1 out of every 4 or 5 games he'll put up like a 30, and then everything else is like 5 to 12 points. Like, you know what I mean?
Right. That's going to be my goal for next year, is to work on my systems so that I don't have this Luis Garcia issue. Because what ends up happening, for those of you who are interested in this, is first of all, there's a Luis Garcia that's on the pitching roster for I think St. Louis, and he's never in. But he's on the list of available players. So every once in a while, if they list him in a certain way, I have it coded a certain way. So sometimes the raw Luis Garcia will get the fantasy points. And then worse, sometimes if Luis Garcia is pitching on the day that the Washington Nationals are playing, then Luis Garcia, the second baseman, might somehow get the projection for Luis Garcia, the pitcher, and I'll end up getting 100% Luis Garcia in my initial runs at second base, projecting for 15 fantasy points. So I have to figure out how to get this handled without having to do it manually. So that's next year's issue. What I have as far as hitting goes in this game actually is, I mentioned Boston, LA, Minnesota, Texas is kind of my second stacks. I do have Houston and Tampa Bay as kind of like third tier possibilities. So depending on how many lineups you run, you can get to some of it. But like you said, I mean, like this is, Tampa's a good bullpen, Houston, whatever. So you don't really want to stack too much of this. But I just for disclosure, I do have them as kind of okay.
Yeah, and be ready. This is the time of year. Be ready for some weird lineups to come out for these teams because there's not a whole lot for them to play for. So you could end up seeing a very strange lineup, and maybe then you do want to get a little bit of the value. But I just am not getting there at the moment. There's lots of ways to go. Man, this slate is really weird. Speaking of weird places to go, this is a strange situation because I'm looking at the projections, and while I don't love this pitcher today, I don't agree with the projections on Plesac I don't think he's a 3.5 K prop guy. This guy was pitcher of the month, we're 1 month removed from him being pitcher of the month. And even in the next month, he still was like solid enough. Another interesting pivot off of some of the other value, but I could say that about so many guys today. And probably I could say that about Lynch as well. I think that the best thing you can do in this spot, the problem is this is going to have ownership, is Cleveland. I think that's a very viable stack today. I just personally don't love it because the guys I would want to use, like Harold Ramirez, just, again, you get an outfielder who's going to be 25% owned, possibly. There's other minimum cost guys I can play. Owen Miller, I do like Owen Miller in general, but probably batting seventh. He's going to get a little ownership at minimum cost. Then people are going to play Rosario. People play Jose Ramirez, and those are the guys I want to play, with the exception of the one guy I would add is Franmil Reyes. I just prefer the other players in that price range better than I do Reyes. But it is a viable stack. I've got it as like a second tier stack for me. And I am not going to play any of the KC as a stack, even though their prices are asking you to in some cases. And also I like the matchup for Merrifield and Perez, but I don't think I'm going to get to the KC stack. I do like Cleveland stack a little bit.
Yeah, Cleveland ranked for me as the top value stack on the board.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and this is well, you hit it right on the head. I mean, you identified these kind of plays that are just cheap that people are going to own. You know what I mean? And that's why that's why they're going to own them, is because they're cheap, and that's why they're going to show up in my stuff as being a good value stack, is because they're cheap, like you said. So, proceed with caution. I would, again, if you're going to play Cleveland, which is totally okay, especially if you want to, pay up for pitching. Just again, do that Bobby thing where you don't take the all the chalky guys, be cognizant of, just sprinkling in, I don't know who's overpriced.
Reyes is overpriced, so he would be a good one.
Yeah.
And I think he's going to be low owned. And I think Yu Chang is another one who I would.
There you go. Like something like that. You know what I mean? Yeah. So yeah, I do have Cleveland rank high because they're for the most part pretty cheap. And I didn't get to Kansas City. I didn't get to any of the pitching.
Yeah, that's all right. That makes perfect sense to me. Going over to the next one. I'm having a hard time with this because all the projections I have and the ownership and everything are telling me to play Alex Wood. The problem I'm having is that I've watched Alex Wood a number of times against this Arizona team this year, and he just has a hard time striking these guys out. And so do a lot of guys with Arizona with lefties, which is weird because they're a terrible team. I probably need to get less Wood than I have got less Wood than I've got at the moment, because he is a guy who showed up for me on both sides initially. I think he does have a good chance at a quality start. And part of why I like him is I think San Francisco is an awesome stack today. I don't know how the lineup will shake out exactly, but if you get Duggar in there at 2.4K, he kind of makes some things work, even if he's batting at the bottom of the order. But I don't think they're going to get ownership outside of maybe Posey. And you've got LaStella, you've got Lamont Wade, Chris Bryant, Yastrzemski, even further down in the order, Crawford, even Longoria. These guys, I know his name's Evan, by the way. I was saying even Longoria, also Longoria. But all of them make sense to me. And I love to try and attack Merrill Kelly. I know it's in San Francisco, not the most ideal thing to do on a large slate in general. Would have been fine last night. So I'm going to take some shots with this San Francisco team today.
I gotta tell you, man, you look at the standings, it's pretty cruel what's happening to the Dodgers this year, if you think about it. I mean, first of all, they lost Trevor Bauer, right?
Oh, they lost everybody's been hurt.
Hold on. They lost Trevor Bauer. Cody Bellinger hasn't gotten a hit the whole season. And yet they have more than 100 wins and are not in first place. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous.
With significantly the best run differential in baseball.
Yeah, that's pretty brutal.
Yeah.
I am not quite getting the wood, so that's where as a matter of fact, as gross as this is, when I just see what I do at the beginning of the day, before I do anything, is when I get my first runs, I just throw stuff into the hopper and I run SaberSim and I run lineups to see what it would look like. And I actually, instead of getting a Cleveland, so I'm getting some Cleveland as part of my value, but I'm getting some Arizonas. And I got to kind of figure out why that would be. I guess some of these guys are just kind of cheap, right? Christian Walker, I guess, is 2,300. Yeah. Stuff like that. So whoever Henry Ramos is 2K. I don't know if he can actually get a hit, but so that's what I was getting. I was getting a little bit of Arizona in my actual builds, where I'm not getting Arizona kind of like in a vacuum. Like if I looked at Arizona as far as where they rank, they don't even show up for me. But when I actually do builds, my builds want me to pay up for pitching, honestly. Mm-hmm. So in those types of things, I'm going to get stuff like Cleveland and Arizona and things like that. So try not to play Arizona, but if you get to them, I think know why that is.
Yeah.
I'll play some San Fran with you. I mean, I think hitters against Merrill Kelly owe me a little money too. At some point they're gonna.
No, it's worked, dude. It's worked a few times this year, big time.
Yeah, and then I guess I've been off at the wrong time. I guess out at the wrong time, or the times I've been out of those slates where like 200 points doesn't win or something like that. I'll play some San Francisco, but I don't want to play Alex Wood. And if anything, I'll play some Arizona value just for construction purposes.
Yep. I'm actually going to put it in my thing. I'm going to be more and more in San Francisco the more I think about it. I just had to double check the weather and everything. All right. So the Dodgers and San Diego with the lowest run total on the slate. No coincidence why the Cy Young winner is going to be pitching against them. I like Scherzer a ton here. I don't think you need to play him because there's other options, but he is a really good option. And you could play a Cole Scherzer lineup. And even if they fail, you're probably still looking at 35 to 40 fantasy points between the two of them at the worst case, with upside of, 60 plus. And as I've been saying the whole second half of the year, I've changed my approach on San Diego. I've stopped being afraid to target them, and I'm happy to try and target them now. And of course, they could always, get it together for a game, and Scherzer can give up a couple home runs, and that's all possible. But you also, on top of it all, have the best pitchers umpire on the slate in Trip Gibson here. Everything is leading me to being heavy on Scherzer on both sides, and I think he's very gettable. And it's going to be Lamet for like an inning or two probably, and then you're going to get long relief with Weathers. Now, while they have a good bullpen in San Diego, the mid relief is a different story, and it's not exactly a bullpen game because I'm expecting Weathers to pitch like 4 innings. And I think with the Dodgers lineup the way it's currently constructed, with these lefties who have power against lefties and the righties who can really hit, and they're going to be like unowned tonight, is what I'm showing right now. I am going to be heavy on the Dodgers at low ownership. I think they're right there. I have some Dodgers and San Francisco stacks. I think because of the prices for the Red Sox, it's very hard to play them with the Red Sox, but you can double spend down at pitcher and do that if you want to. They're easier to get to on FanDuel, but I do think the Dodgers are one of the elite stacks tonight. I have them behind Boston, but I do think that they have a chance at having a really big game tonight. And I know they've struggled, but they've had some tough matchups recently. And Lamet's awesome in general, but he's only going to pitch an inning or two, so I'm not really that worried about it. But I'm very high on the Dodgers tonight and very high on Scherzer.
I have Scherzer as the top pitcher on the slate. Not particularly earth-shattering, but yep. Well, I mean, Walker is the best quote unquote value, but I think Scherzer is the best pitcher on the slate, best fantasy upside and all that stuff. I actually do have the Dodgers rated alongside of, like I said, I have that other tier of Houston, Tampa Bay, and I have the Dodgers with them. So yeah, I'll play some Dodgers if you like them. So I'll do some of that. So it'll be Scherzer, it'll be Dodgers, and yeah, sounds good to me.
And we'll have no idea how we're doing in today. Today I'm gonna have no idea how I'm doing. I do have the Boston stuff early, but I have so much late on today's slate. It's crazy.
Ooh, look at this game. If you didn't like any of that for pitching,
why in the world is no one playing these? Like I'm just saying the projections. Why for the first time this season, they don't love Logan Gilbert because he had one bad outing. I don't really understand it. I am more than happy to take the low ownership on Gilbert, and I'm more than happy to take Montas here. I really like Montas. Actually, I'm like, I don't know. I should be a president of the Montas fan club because I always feel like I like him maybe a little bit better than the field does. But the field is going to probably like him okay tonight. I do like him a lot. It does feel like, okay, well, you know, we could pay 700 more for Cole, and he's going to be 1/3 the ownership probably. But I like both these pitchers quite a bit, and it also gives you a million. You know, you do have some late swap possibilities if you're going to be playing the hitters from the other side, because you can always, if you don't feel as good about Montas, you can switch over to Scherzer, get a 2v2 if you get the right guys out there. There's just a lot you can do out there with these particular pitchers, and I think that Gilbert's just in a forgotten price tier, and I still think he's really talented. And the A's are they've become like basically a slightly below average strikeout team. Depends on who's in the lineup actually for them, but they do have some strikeouts in the lineups. You've got Mashin, Seth Brown, and then you've got Matt Olson, big strikeout guy, and then you've got Chapman. But you do have some sort of steady bats that just hit a lot of ground balls also, which I don't know. So I'm very into both these pitchers.
Absolutely. I mean, this is pivot city, man. I mean, this is great. I like both these options. I like your comment, by the way, about the Gilbert being kind of a forgotten price tier. You know, he's not even a pivot. He's just sitting there by himself. You know, I like that a lot. Like you said, one bad game that all of a sudden he's no good anymore. Yeah. He's like freaking 30% owned every freaking slate. And now no one's gonna play him.
Right.
And Montas again. I mean, I've between him and these other A's guys, I never seem to get right. I'm gonna keep trying it, man. This could be one of those slates where I might literally have 0 fantasy points going into these late games. I mean, I can end up with the Dodger stacks in San Francisco.
Yep.
You know, and these two the Oakland Seattle pitchers together, or Scherzer with one of them, you know, and I could just be sitting there just rooting for rain and power outages in the early games. You know what I mean? Like whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. And by the way, I'm just going to double check the weather to see if there's anything else that it leads me to that. I think that it's the first time in a while, by the way, we've been on the same page. Maybe good for us today to be on the page. But I'm looking at the weather, and there's no real weather of anything that makes it look like it's going to rain. But just looking, because I feel like a lot of these outside of Boston, I think that everybody else. The one thing I would say about Boston that's a little bit down is, even though it's actually been pretty decent and based on similar games in the past here. Shout out to Roto Grinders and Roth, but I do think that, you know, at 68 degrees in Baltimore, it's not like we're seeing these games like they were 90 degrees earlier in the season with all the humidity. It's a little different right now. Atlanta's got really good hitting weather. Minnesota's got solid hitting weather, even though the wind's blowing a little bit. It is 78 degrees. Just to sort of, you know, and actually the Dodger game, you know, even though I do like the Dodgers here in LA, it's only going to be like 65, 66. So, but you will have wind blowing out to right center. So there's a little bit, you know, sort of, you know, almost negates itself, I feel like. But I do like this spot a lot. And for the Dodgers, I mean, just to sum up for me, I'm just going to look at my actual builds because I'll do exactly what I'm saying I'm going to do. I have the Dodgers and Giants. I think the Giants are actually my second favorite stack, just right there with the Dodgers. And I think my favorite stack is going to be Boston, but I do think you can get off the board with these other stacks, and Minnesota. Minnesota's in there too. Sorry.
I'll tell you this. I don't know, man. How are we going to play these Dodgers? So expensive.
That's the point. That's why they're going to be unowned. That's how my brain always goes. Everybody else.
How do we play the Dodgers with Scherzer?
Oh, you play one of the 6,100s. You include Gavin Lux in your stack, and you're off to the races. Hopefully. But yeah, you play Willie Calhoun too as another guy who's 2K. You know, there's value out there. I mean,
you stack Willie Calhoun with correlative with Taylor Hearn.
Yeah, I mean, look at these Texas. I'm just gonna tell you like some of the prices today. You have guys with like projections to go like 4 and 5x or 4 plus X all over the place. So Calhoun, Willie Calhoun, Harold Ramirez, Owen Miller, Brandon Marsh, Phil Gosselin. Depending on where Cave is in the lineup, Michael Conforto is only 2,900. There's just a lot of good value. You mentioned Christian Walker, Max Stassi. There's a lot of guys who are in that 2K-ish range that I feel like open things up for you to play the ones you want. The problem is, I like trying to combo stack the Dodgers with Boston is no easy business, and it forces you into some Iglesias's, which you don't really want too much of if you're going to do like a 4-4 stack, which is what I was trying to do for my main lineup tonight. But I really do like I do think the Giants, even I'm just double checking the weather in San Francisco, because that's the one thing that always freaks me out, because you never know if it might be like 49 degrees. It's 59 degrees. So
chilly here, by the way, just so you know, for the Mets.
Yeah. Oh, for the Mets one, I'll take that. We want that suppression, right? We're mostly going to be into the pitching in that one anyway. But I've got a lot of Scherzer, Walker, Montas, Gilbert, and then I've got some Wood and Mikolas. Now, I think the idea to play Mikolas is probably to play him with like a Walker or one of the spend downs, because I don't think you're looking for him to win you.
You really want to play that, huh? The Mikolas, huh?
I'm just saying, as a real life pitcher, he's good enough to get the job done here. The strikeouts are a concern. I'm just saying, like, Tywin Walker hasn't put up 20 fantasy points in about a month and a half or so, or something like that. Mikolas has put up 20 in his last 2 game starts. Each of his last 2 starts.
I'll tell you who is probably going to be. Yeah, it's tough not to play him. I guess the umpire would keep you from it, maybe, but Evaldi up against Baltimore. I mean, I don't know. That seems like
I think you're right about that. I think I've got that as a note to get a little bit more to get some Evaldi, and I can do it by getting less Wood. On FanDuel, just real quick, because to mention it, just how I've got it. I have the Dodgers, Twins, and Boston as a little bit better on FanDuel, and it's because I like Logan Gilbert as a starter over there. I think he makes a lot of sense at 7,700. And I think you could play Wood also at 7,500. Both those guys are very viable to me in terms of getting 6 innings and a quality start. Now the win may be more likely for Wood than it is for Gilbert, but I think it's something I want to get involved in. And as I just keep mentioning, you're going to see I'm going to have a lot of Schwarber in my lineups tonight when I'm playing Boston, and I'm going to try and mix in the other low-owned bats as well. That's just the one thing. Like, Schwarber was 4% owned on FanDuel last night, which of course launched me to the first place, which didn't last all that long. How's your sum up for the slate sheets?
Yeah, I just one. So we got a little bit of time.
Okay. Yeah, of course.
On FanDuel, like since you, okay. Let me just see what this is going to look like. So I really like Minnesota on FanDuel. So what I want to see is if I pay for all this stuff, like let's say I want to play Buxton, I want to play Kepler. Let's say I play
Donaldson.
What's Sano? First base?
Yeah, Sano, but I think that Sano, that's actually a great thing to do. You can play Sano and Garver, who are both way too cheap.
So let's say, for example, I play
Donaldson.
Well, I was going to say Arias, but
Arias is 21, but I mean Garver's 26 and at least has.
Let's put Donaldson just for hell of it.
Yeah.
What I was thinking is if we paid down a little bit, let's say we played Gilbert over here, then we could probably jam Dodgers in here, right?
Yes,
or close.
Very similar to what I did. I just didn't. I didn't do as much of the Buxton thing today.
Right.
But I do. I mean, I love him. I just think that the way I built with my Dodgers, I ended up with more Donaldson and Garver and Kepler and Sano, just because I wanted to spend up on some Dodgers on FanDuel because it was easy. I felt like that. I like the stack, and like Justin Turner's 3,200.
I'll tell you the other thing about the Dodgers that bothers me is San Diego does have a good bullpen, right? And I feel as though San Diego is really going to try to stick it to the Dodgers as much as possible.
100%.
So that scares me just a little bit.
Yep. That's fair enough. I mean, the Dodgers, Giants, go to the Giants. The Giants are, a really valuable stack. It's just these are not the best hitting weather games. Minnesota,
right?
And then Minnesota stands out actually as a hitting game, but I do like that. I mean, I do think that the Boston side, and then also I still think that I'm going to end up with a couple Baltimore one-offs today too. All right. Anything else before we jump over and do another video on the golf slate?
No, we're good.
Okay. All right. Good luck to everybody tonight. Hopefully I will be back for live. I'm going to be hustling back from Santa Barbara.
Okay.
If for some way that I'm not, I will let you guys know in advance. But you can check out all of my plays at truedfs.com, and Sheets is Sheets and everything. And for Sheets and everyone at True DFS, good luck out there, and let's crush it tonight.